You're listening to The Sacred Sofa, a podcast that explores all things theology and therapy. My name is Grace Brown. I'm a registered psychotherapist, certified Canadian counselor, and owner of Journey with Grace Counseling Services.
And I'm Brad Watson, pastor of Nexus Church and author of the book, A Path Called Compelling. Welcome to The Sacred Sofa. Welcome back to The Sacred Sofa, everyone. It's great to be with you. And Grace, welcome to you as well. And in case our listeners aren't aware, Grace, of the stress that you and I are currently under, maybe you could fill them in, bring them up to speed, what's happening in our lives.
What's happening in our lives? I think you might be more stressed than I am. You're very invested in the Jays and the World Series.
Yes,
hello, everyone. I mean, it's been pretty exciting baseball here in
really
Toronto.
Has.
Monday, 18 innings. And pulling out a win last night, thankfully in 9 innings.
Yes. Now, did you stay up for the whole game?
I did not.
You did not?
I did not. No one is functioning well in this GTA area in the last week. No one is functioning at full capacity, but it is exciting.
Yes, and I stayed up for the whole game, Grace, and all of yesterday. I was, like you said, I was not operating well. So I'll tell you,
not allowed to be cranky with your children.
Yeah, I know. All of your some of your stuff was coming back to me when you're tired, you're hungry. I was like, oh boy. It'd be a rough day. But with the stress of the World Series upon us, Grace, we could probably all use a little pick-me-up, and it's perfect timing in our plot lines because today is all about the comedy plot line. Now, I should say not stand-up comedy, but a sort of deep, sacred kind of comedy that moves us from confusion to clarity, disguise to recognition, division to union. That's the sort of play of the comedy plot line. So it's a storyline that we all love because it never ends in despair, but in reunion and hope. So it's a great storyline for us. Say, if you've ever laughed through tears or found grace in something absurd, hopefully this conversation is for you. So, Grace, I find it curious that our faith path and faith story actually begins with laughter. This kind of caught me by surprise, but the matriarch of our faith, Sarah, right? We're told in Genesis, this is where the real storyline of faith takes off. She's told she's going to have a baby in her 90s, which is like a comedy punchline. Like, it's just silly. It's absurd. And we're told in Genesis that Sarah, she laughs. She starts laughing at this idea. And so I just find it amazing that laughter sort of baked into our story. Comedy, it seems, is baked into the DNA of belief. And I'm curious, as a therapist, what do you make of laughter as a response to, say, something unbelievable or absurd? And how does it show up for us, maybe when we're faced with things too painful, too surprising, maybe too beautiful? Like, laughter just shows up in so many different places in life.
Now, I'm not sure about other therapists, but laughter for sure is a strong part of my connections with my clients and also with my personal therapist.
Okay.
She's journeyed with me long enough to the absurdity of life. I've been sharing that quote you shared with us some episodes ago by Lillian Bell. Life is one damn thing after the other. I'm telling you, I'm gonna make myself a t-shirt because it's true. Like, sometimes it's just, life is just hard and ridiculous. And so laughter in sessions can actually be very cathartic. Sometimes a person will have revealed something traumatic that's so unbelievable and so painfully ridiculous that the tears are just too far away, or maybe they feel too scary to release right then, but it still can acknowledge the hurt. So it can be very cathartic. It can be a joining with a client after finding a place of healing, right? The relief of laughter and recovery. It's the laughter of a client making a connection that moves them along the path of their healing journey. Absolutely, laughter is a strong part of therapeutic process.
Yeah, I find it so fascinating because laughter shows up in so many places. Sometimes it could be misplaced, right? Like maybe there's something awkward going on and I laugh, right? There's a mechanism there. But it can show up. I forget who it was, did a study on times human beings laughed, and 80% of the time, nothing distinctly funny had been said before it. Like there's just this
Mm-hmm.
social cohesion that comes with laughter. And it's interesting to me because a part of the comedy plot line is definitely, as you said, Grace laughing up at the absurd of life, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and at some days, it's like all you can do is throw up your hands and go, "This is absurd that I
Mm-hmm.
found myself in this situation." You laugh, but
I'm I'm
another, oh yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
thinking of one odd moment that
Mm.
communal laughter took place, and it was super awkward. And this is before I was a therapist, but I was thinking, what is happening right now? Did you ever go see Titanic?
Yes.
So I saw it in theater,
Okay.
and the when the ship is going down and people are sliding and like clawing for,
Yeah.
like, so many people just like erupted into this weird, awkward laughter. And I thought to myself,
Oh,
maybe they just can't handle what we're seeing right now.
no, no
But
kidding.
that still sits with me. It was just so bizarre.
That is quite fascinating. And yes, because sometimes pain of life, stress of life, it's like laughter is all we can do. That is
That's
an
all you have.
interesting.
Absolutely.
So there's laughter at the absurd, but one of the interesting things to me about comedy is it functions as sort of a healing mirror for us. It sort of holds up a mirror to our contradictions and foolishness and as humans. And the interesting thing is we'll get to this next week.
Hmm.
Tragedies do the same thing except they end a lot worse than comedies do.
Right.
Um, but it's like comedy holds up a mirror to us, not to shame us, but to
Hmm.
help us see ourselves with gentleness. I was reading this week that what makes comedy so good is it's always laced with grace. So we
Hmm.
laugh
Hmm.
because grace reframes what would otherwise be unbearable. But we all have, I don't know if you've got these, but we all have contradictions about us as humans. And for me, Grace, it shows up most distinctly and a lot recently between night Brad and morning Brad.
Okay.
I'm watching the game and everything inside of me is like, you should go to bed. Tomorrow's going to be bad. And I refuse to go to bed. And then I set my alarm early in the morning. And when it went off, I'm all upset at myself for staying up. Or I'll have discipline with food all day, Grace. And
Hmm.
then night comes
Hmm.
around, I just throw caution to the wind. Like there's so many contradictions about us. In one moment, I can have this conviction. I'm not going to do that or do this. And then later in the same day, I can throw it all aside. So humor, I think, helps expose us to our
Hmm.
contradictions again in a gentle way. So I'm curious from you, Grace, how can humor and maybe even self-deprecating laughter actually help people grow emotionally or spiritually? And the flip side, we've already alluded to it. When does laughter become maybe avoidance instead of healing?
Hmm. Well, I can't really help you with the night thing in terms of the game
Mm,
because it's the
you,
World
it's the
Series.
World Series,
You're
exactly.
taking one for the team, as it were. But maybe I can give you a little insight to the
Okay.
nighttime eating,
Okay, I'm sure
which
you could.
will hopefully, invite self-compassion rather than
Right,
criticism.
right.
But what's happening with the nighttime eating is
Mm,
it's actually a biological function.
mm.
I've learned that the later we stay up, it's our body's way of signaling that we need nourishment to do what it is we're doing to stay up.
Ah, okay.
Because think about it, like if you're staying up after, 10 to 3, like
Yeah, yes.
whatever it is you're
Yes.
doing, your body needs fuel. And so try not to
Mm,
judge yourself if you're going to stay up late and all of a sudden you feel a little peckish,
yes.
you
Well,
know.
and that makes sense on another level too, because it's not just passive, whether you're watching a drama TV show or the drama of the World Series. It's like your body's also in a stress mode, right? So
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
fascinating.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
That's good to
So
know.
now, is it chips and chocolate that might
Oh,
be better?
oh yes.
Then you can,
Mm. Oh yes.
that
You
might need a little more strategy. But humor, self-deprecating laughter. Now, self-deprecating humor can be a bit tricky.
Mm,
If it's used from a place of humility and not low self-esteem, it works,
right.
right? I'm sure we've heard folks give self-deprecating humor, and you're like, eesh,
Mm,
like, you're exposing something here
mm-hmm.
that's super vulnerable for sure, but maybe not, maybe a bit more maladaptive as well. So we got to be careful with that. But self-deprecating humor can also normalize our weaknesses and flaws as humans. So
Mm,
that's, in a healthy way in terms of just like you were vulnerable with your night, Brad.
mm, mm-hmm.
um, Laughter used to hurt self and others isn't helpful.
Right.
So that's why it's so tricky. When laughter is used to avoid vulnerability and avoid addressing the places that need healing, it is
Mm,
absolutely detrimental to our mental, emotional, and spiritual health.
mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, we seem laughter hide some of the deepest pain until it's too late.
Right.
We're thinking of even some celebrities most recently. It's like
Mm,
no one knew what was really going under, but they
mm-hmm.
were known for their comedic um, uh, presence.
Mm-hmm.
In general, I think it's true that laughter is the best medicine
Mm,
because research has shown us and science has shown us that laughing and smiling increases the happy hormones,
mm,
dopamine, serotonin, the endorphins that we get, oxytocin. All of those are hormones that reduce anxiety and depression.
mm,
And so laughing and smiling with others actually increases those hormone levels in duplicate. So, laughter can be a strong indicator of healing, hope, and optimism renewed. It's
mm.
very powerful.
Yeah, that's interesting that it has so many health benefits. So
Yes.
but some good caution there too, and you hear things in the comedy world like no punching down with your comedy, right? Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in terms of who's the butt of your joke and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the comedy plot line though, Grace, is that for people in the story, and I think this is interesting when you think about your favorite comedy movie. So it always is pushing for reunion at the end. But for the people in the story, as you're watching and observing them, things don't feel funny to the people in the
Mm-hmm.
story,
Mm-hmm.
right? For them, it's pain, it's stress. It's only funny to the outside observer. And so, comedy allows us to see our own lives gently because all of us, our lives are full of confusion. There's relational misunderstandings, misreading text, cross wires, motives. Sometimes we don't understand about
Right.
ourselves. And comedy reminds us that confusion isn't the end of the story. It's part of the plot line that leads to clarity. But as confusion is such a huge part of life, do you
Mm-hmm.
think confusion, especially about who we are, could maybe be in some ways a good thing? Like, might being able to sit in uncertainty or contradiction be a part of healthy growth rather than wanting to fix something right away? I'm just curious your
Mm.
thoughts about that.
I would say sure, but temporarily, because
Mm,
even though sitting in the confusion and the uncertainty can be necessary, we don't want to stay there. We don't want
mm,
to get stuck, right? Because I feel like to be stuck in the confusion avoids the necessary work, right?
mm,
It'd be a form of procrastination, really.
right.
Now, the polar opposite is also true that when life is uncertain, it can be tempting to rush ahead and try to force some sense of security.
Mm,
So, wisdom and patience will help us find that balance.
mm,
Taking a moment to explore what those heavy emotions are can actually build our capacity to tolerate those uncomfortable moments, the grief, the pain.
mm,
I've said this before, strength and resilience is forged through the struggle.
mm,
And through the struggle is often how suffering can at times create meaning.
mm,
To sit with what is going on, what's happening to me. The circumstances may or may not change, but
mm,
we are transformed through the process.
mm. I like that distinction because it helps keep us away from, at times we can sometimes romanticize suffering as good.
Mm,
It's not that the suffering is good, it's that it can be, as you're saying, a place where strength and resilience is forged. So I like
mhm,
that there. Um, Now, one of the biggest comedy tropes is that in films, shows that are comedy, people sometimes get themselves in disguises. People wear
mm,
disguises, they hide behind disguises in masks. And I was thinking of in scripture, this happens quite a bit. I think the most famous example would be Jacob and Esau, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Jacob is going to steal his brother's birthright, and so he dresses up, all hairy, puts that story's confusing to me, but he's in a disguise. He's pretending to be his brother, steals his birthright. And it's interesting because Esau is about to approach him years later. It looks like it's going to be a big battle. And the night before, he wrestles with God. Sort of the disguise comes off. His true identity is revealed. Jacob, he becomes Israel. And in that, he experiences grace from his brother the next day. And, as I thought about that, it's like, it's so true. I don't know if you've seen Napoleon Dynamite. That's one of my favorite comedy films. Oh, you must. It's just absurd. Grace,
I
but
feel like our comedies are gonna be
you
different,
may they're
Brad.
going to be different. I'm going to test you on that a little bit later. But for those who have seen Napoleon Dynamite, he just hides behind this awkward armor. And the one time he lets his defense down and he ends up dancing on stage, reveals his true self, then he finds acceptance, and he's accepted not in spite of his oddities, but because, people love him for that. And so comedy storylines of masks and disguises remind us how much energy I think we spend as humans pretending. We hide behind our competence. Some of us, I'm guilty of this sometimes. I know others too. You can hide behind humor or perfection or whatever persona you're creating. Yet the comedy of grace invites us to take the mask off and be seen. That's the sort of understanding, is when we reveal ourselves, that can be liberating. And I'm assuming, Grace, you've probably seen a lot of this in therapy, people trying to perform their way to love or hiding behind something. Why is it so hard for us to believe, do you think, Grace, that maybe we could be loved and accepted without the mask, without the disguise? And what helps someone risk taking it off?
I think one of the many reasons is there's so many messages bombarding us, telling us who we are and what we should be.
Hmm.
And if you start to believe that, it can be hard to resist succumbing to the pressure to create this false self. And I think it's mentally and emotionally and spiritually damaging trying to maintain it.
Hmm.
Um, in the realm of relationships, especially romantic relationships, I often encourage folks, it's like, you have to be true to who you are, because who is that person falling in love with then? If
Hmm.
you're creating this false self, that's the
Right.
person they're partnering with. And then are
Hmm.
we going to bait and switch? At what point,
Yeah.
is the truth revealed? And so I think it also can be hard to see the reality
Hmm.
for, especially if you're on a lot of social media and things like that, those who claim success in pretending, right? The social media posts, the Instagram realities,
Hmm.
as it goes. And I think it takes getting to a place where the pain of the mask is greater than the fear of being exposed or being alone or not accepted, and
Hmm.
for folks to try something different.
Hmm.
And I love being a witness to the courage of folks working to take off the mask. It's completely inspiring.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting. I was talking about this in my sermon about how I've observed in my own life that the people that I feel most affectionate toward are people who've eventually let me see their flaws.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes being able to just say, my goodness, that was kind of absurd, or being able to laugh together at our own contradictions. There's a sort of, when we let people see us without the mask, there's a mutual recognition there. And that
Mm-hmm.
can be sort of holy ground, because when you let me see your flaws, I feel at least seen and recognized with my own flaws. So I'm
I
wondering,
love that.
Grace,
I do
you
believe
know,
it's sacred. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What does it do then for our relationships when we can laugh at ourselves together? And is there something about shared laughter that can break down shame, stigma, defensiveness, even between people?
Absolutely. Shared laughter not only increases the levels of the happy hormones, right?
Mm,
Reducing stress, reducing anxiety and depression, but
mm,
it connects us.
mm,
Our stories are now shared, our burdens halved,
mm,
right? Shared laughter lets us see the vulnerability and the humanity in all of us.
mm,
And I
mm,
believe that's the beauty and the power of connection.
mm. Yeah, it's said there's a bit of a trope that says the tragedy plot line ends in funerals, and the comedy plot line ends in weddings. There's
Yeah.
always this sort of
Uh-huh.
a reunion, everything has fallen apart, but it comes together at the end hilariously, and there's a wedding. Now, you mentioned we probably have different tastes in comedies. I've got to ask you, Grace, have you seen What About Bob?
No,
Oh,
no.
oh my. Okay. Okay. What are some of your favorite funny movies? I'm curious.
And see, the things that make me laugh are things that are like could be real and then are like embellished. I'm not into
Ah,
like slapstick humor, things that
okay.
are just so beyond like I'm thinking of someone right now like Trevor Noah. He's like one
Yes.
of my famous comedics.
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
that what you say? Comedians.
Yeah.
Because he tells real stories, but they're like embellished. And I can
Right.
see myself like tripping over something and
Mm.
jumping up to, not feel embarrassed. Like those are the
Yes.
things that make me really giggle
Okay.
and laugh.
Yes.
So just the slapstick stuff doesn't
Not
quite
not
get.
not so much. Well, I'm you should maybe actually I'm thinking what about Bob might be every therapist's worst nightmare because the whole
Okay.
storyline is a very neurotic man happens upon a new therapist and he will not leave this guy alone. In fact, he ends up following him on vacation. So he shows oh yeah, all sorts of boundaries are crossed, but it's hilarious. So what ends up happening is the therapist who's a bit of a control freak doesn't like Bob,
Mhm.
and everyone at the beginning of the movie, he's neurotic, nobody wants him around, but the end of the movie, Bob actually marries into the therapist's family, which is hilarious.
Wow.
Yeah, I think you can get a kick out of it, but it sort of really goes along with how comedies work. There's an outsider, a loser, somebody's on the outs, and by the end, there's some sort of reunion. So I'm curious. I was kind of hoping you had seen that film, but yeah.
Well, I do know that there are way too many shows and movies out there that skew what therapy is and isn't.
Right, right.
And yes, it would absolutely be scary to have a client breach the code of boundaries, just as it would be a tragedy for a therapist to harm a client by breaching
Mm.
boundaries. So,
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about things that might be funny on the outside.
Yeah.
I suspect not so funny. And I do appreciate the checks and balances of clinical supervision. That's an
Mm.
intervention that's really helpful. And the work of our college for registered psychotherapists that mitigate the risk of things like this.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, it's like you said earlier, for some watching, it might be funny, living it, not so much.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
that being said, I do
Yes.
recall a show that you talked to me about that I started
Yes.
watching,
Shrinking.
Shrinking.
Are
That has been funny.
okay.
That is funny.
Okay.
Not
Okay.
only the clients he's been working with, but I think some therapists could see themselves left unchecked. We absolutely would just kind of lose it
Yes.
and so
Yes.
that you and I can join on that now.
Okay. Okay. And of course, the show has so many client therapist breach
Yes.
codes, but there's three different therapists in the show, and they all bring something really unique to the mix. And
Quirky
it's
and
yes, yes.
ridiculous.
Oh, so good. But I was thinking of this because, again, a lot of comedies end in some sort of wedding. And it's interesting because Jesus plays around with this motif a lot, right?
Mhm.
Like his first miracle, of course, is a wedding, and it looks like things are going to fall apart, but he keeps the party going. But he also
Mhm.
plays around with this idea. Another story he tells about a man's hosting a great banquet. Maybe it's a wedding, we don't really know. All of his super important friends that he invites, they don't show up, so he starts bringing in, it's like everyone
Mhm.
from the streets, just everyone come in. And I'm curious, with that as a bit of a thing in the comedy plot line, how you see this playing out in community or relationships, that movement from exclusion to belonging, and
Mhm.
why does grace so often look ridiculous before it looks beautiful?
Hmm. I think it's like we said in our previous episode. Even though we deeply hope for unconditional love, it's not something we can actually do.
Hmm.
So then when we witness moments of inclusion, moments
Hmm.
of tenderness, it's heartwarming and almost too much to hold in our hearts,
Right,
right?
right.
When you mentioned before weeping copiously, and it's like, and I think, yes, sometimes we laugh from a mixture of joy because that's so too deep to hold such
Mm,
heartwarmingness. We laugh because the tears can overwhelm us. And
mm,
we laugh because we desperately want to keep feeling that sense of belonging. And we are absolutely grateful.
mm. And that's the beauty of the comedy plot line. It's more than just the jokes, though they are funny as well. It's about the surprise of grace at the end, that grace is laced through these stories, and the laughter that rises when we let ourselves be seen, when what we feared revealing has already been met with love. So
Mm,
maybe that's sort of at the end of the day, grace may be the divine punchline that the universe isn't a tragedy after all, but a comedy
mm,
still unfolding.
mhm. Who knew that comedy could be so complex?
That's right. Yes.
And
Oh,
just like the other storylines we've explored so far, narrative self, overcoming the monster, rags to riches, the quest, voyage and return. I think we've got one more
we got
storyline,
two.
right? Two
We
more to
got two
explore.
left. Yes.
Can you give us a teaser for what we got coming next?
Yes. So there's still tragedy
Mm,
and rebirth. So rebirth is that'll end us on a good note. Tragedy, that's what we'll be exploring next week. And it's not the tragedy plot line is not natural tragedy. It's not, oh, pain, disease, loss that way. It's the
okay.
tragedy that comes from a hero's fall, flaws that a hero has that takes them down. So it'll be a chance for us
Oh.
to examine ourselves and see, do a little soul searching that way. So should be good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Stay tuned with us.
All
This has
right.
been awesome as always, Brad. We'll have to find more comedic things
I
to
know.
watch together and
I'm
debrief.
I'm thrilled though that you're liking shrinking. So that's good.
All right.
All
Always
right.
a pleasure, Brad. Thanks to
Yes.
all our listeners, and we will see you next time.
See you next time.